Now, there's this, I might nerd out on you for a minute here, but there's this cognitive scientist and philosopher named John Vervaeke, who's done some really amazing work around the evolution of human consciousness over the course of the entire human story, from like Neanderthal cave dwellers until right now. Now, in his study, when he comes to the section of human history on Christ and what Christianity has done for the evolution of human consciousness, he picks one thing that Christianity has done and given us, and it's the word agape. This is the one thing that the human community did not really develop until put on display in the person and work of Christ. This is what John Vervaeke says, and he is not a part of the community of faith. He considers himself an atheist or a non-theist. Now, we've been largely tribalistic for much of our human existence, and if we're honest, we kind of remain that way a lot of the time. We tend to love and look out for our tribe, those whom our own personal interest is wrapped up in. You know, our family, our nation, our political party, our denomination, our religion, our friend group, right? But when we experience something that makes us stand out from the conformity to the group standard, like sickness or weakness or doubt or questioning of values or doctrines or dogmas, a change in our understanding, the love that we shared in our tribe, phileo love, is not strong enough to keep including us, because we threaten the shared understanding, values, doctrines, dogmas, etc. And when we find refuge in this figurative Bethany somewhere, all of a sudden we don't fit in Jerusalem and we're kicked off, out of sight, out of mind, off into these Bethany scenarios. Now, John Vervaeke defines the Christian value of agape love not as an emotion or a feeling, but a way of being in the world that involves a radical transformation of ourself, of our being, of our personhood. Agape love requires us to go beyond our individual tribal affiliations and connect with something larger than our own interests. Agape love involves a deep commitment to the flourishing of others, even at our own expense. It requires us to work towards the greater good of all beings, which is why Jesus says to agape our enemies. And this is the singular greatest contribution of Christianity to the human race, according to John Vervaeke. Now, many other faiths of the time emphasize knowledge and personal enlightenment and awakening, but then they still practice slavery and social caste systems that were abusive and exclusive. And then there's other religions that emphasize personal morality and behavior, but then created exclusionary power structures that consolidated wealth to those at the top of them, that insulated them from those who lived in Bethany. But early Christianity offered the gift of agape, a self-sacrificial love that is God. They rejected slavery. They welcomed them as equals. They rejected people who were higher up in standing socially. And they said, when you come into here, slaves and Epicureans are the same. They rejected the patriarchal practices and received widows and empowered women and put them in leadership. They rejected seizing of power and built a community where everything was shared and no one was poor. And then we forgot it because Rome took everything over in 300 and some AD. Now, Jesus said that Lazarus's condition will not lead to death, but to the glory of God, which is a very confusing phrase. But then he says something very strong. He says, but Jesus loved Lazarus. Now, the notes sent to Jesus said, the one you phileo is sick. And then the correction comes, it says, but Jesus agaped Lazarus. Yet he stayed 2 more days where he was, and this confuses me, but it's also a very accurate description of how life actually works. You know, I wonder where God is much of the time while I just struggle along in life. I get mad at God for not intervening. I get filled with despair that, you know, how I envision how God is supposed to be working is not how it's actually working on the ground. Here is the great invitation to recognize the incongruity of what I believe and how it actually works in order to see something else. You see, the thing broken with the world is not God's inaction within it, but our refusal to see and embrace the kind of love that God is, agape, that when practiced, would create hospitable places for us. But we would rather be personally rich, powerful, comfortable. So we keep that system intact, even though we're living in Bethany, in hopes that one day we're going to arrive at the gates of affluence and bid farewell to Bethany altogether. But the answer is wrapped up in us all and our responsibility to love like God is in character